Hi, welcome to Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts, where our experts answer your questions. And I've got two great experts here today to answer a question relative to calf sales. If you have questions for us, you can send them to us at bci@ksu.edu. Good morning, Dr. Philip Lancaster.
Good morning, Brad.
And Dr. Dustin Pendle.
Morning.
So they're here to answer the question relative to should I sell at weaning, or should I consider retained ownership through the feeding phase? And based on their answers, they'll get up to 10 points. Dustin, I'm going to you first.
I'm going to sell at weaning for a few reasons. Number one, I'm not very I'm a risk-averse producer, and so I don't want to take on that extra risk keeping those calves a little longer. They could die. So that's I'm not a big risk fan. Second of all, cash flow. I want the money now so I can pay the bills. And so those are kind of two of my thoughts. And then there's other things like, I don't have a good relationship maybe with a feed yard and stuff. So I'm going to sell at weaning.
Okay. Good start for Dustin. 5 points for him. Philip?
I'm going to say it depends. I'm going to give the economist answer right off the bat. I think you got to pay attention a little bit to the market. I like retained ownership if the market is right. So like here, recently we've been on a climb as far as fed cattle prices and things like that. So, but what's going to happen in the future? And when we're on that downhill slide, obviously that's not a good time to retain ownership. But since I own the calves now, I'm in the driver's seat. And so I can decide whether I want to retain ownership or if I want to go ahead and sell them from that perspective. But then, just also making sure you're penciling out the cost of and the value of gain and the cost of gain to get them there.
How would and I'm going to, good answer, except for that it depends. I'll pin you down a little bit. But how am I going to know the value of gain and cost of gain if I'm going to take them to a feed yard and go forward? So how do I know those numbers?
I need to talk to the feed yard. If I'm going to work if I'm going to feed them myself or if I'm going to have somebody custom feed them for me, I need to talk to that custom yard. I need to figure out and talk to them what's my cost of gain going to be, what are going to be the other charges, yardage and all that kind of stuff, what's feed costs going to be. Are they going to help me market them? Are they going to do some risk management for me along the way and all those kind of things? So I need to have a really good conversation with that feed yard before I make that decision.
Because like many things, I can get the cost pretty well hammered out. Mm-hmm. Value of gain, which is what you talked about, is I'm assuming you're calculating that based on what I'm projecting to sell them for.
Yep.
Which is a ballpark guess or an estimate. Is that fair?
Yeah. And so, so that depends. That's where you come into work with that feed yard. They've got experience of that, maybe forward contracting, maybe some other kind of hedging or something like that to help you manage that risk.
Okay. So, Dustin, I'm going to turn back to you. And since we're talking about risk, you said I may want to avoid that risk. But let's say you're going to go forward with this process. What are the risks you think about post-weaning, and how would you try to mitigate those?
So a couple risks, I guess, what I was initially thinking was a production risk. So possibly, death would be one example, and then also the price risk. But how do you mitigate those? As Philip talked about, you want to have a relationship with that yard and participate in maybe some kind of futures forward contract would help reduce some of the price risk management. Other risk management from the production side, it could be insurance, something like that. And so definitely would look into some kind of product, whether, contracts, insurance, whatnot, to try to reduce either price or the production risk.
Okay. So, and then quick follow-up for both of you. Is there a strategy somewhere in between where I keep them on my operation for 90 to 100 days and then sell them or then retain ownership? And how would you decide how long I'm going to keep them on my operation after weaning? Philip, I'm going to go to you first.
Yes, there is. That you could background them on your own operation before you either sell them or transition them to the custom feed yard. And that depends on a couple of different things right off the bat. One, do I have the forage resources or feed resources available? And what's my cost of gain on my operation going to be versus the cost of gain at that yard? And so if I can feed them cheaper and put, 200-300 pounds on them before I take them to the finish yard, then good. But if it's cheaper, obviously, to do it at the finish yard, then that would be the better option.
Yep. Except I have to have a different cash outlay there. Real quick, Dustin, do you have a thought on how long you keep them?
I guess I would pencil everything out like Philip was saying. What's the value gain on your operation? And try to figure out what that value is going to be, and then at a certain point, kind of what that cost versus that additional value added is kind of where that's going to be break even. But
Excellent. Good answers, guys. Philip ended up with 9 points. Dustin ended up with 8. And hopefully that was helpful to you. If you have other questions you'd like us to answer, send us an email at bci@ksu.edu.